Hello everyone, welcome to Master JavaScript the Right Way. My name is Agnes Grace and I am a full stack developer. In this series, I'm going to teach you everything you need to work either as a front-end developer, back-end developer, or full stack developer. We are diving deep into JavaScript from the very basics to advanced topics. Whether you are brand new to programming or brushing up on your JavaScript skills, this series has something for you. Throughout this series, I will break down everything you need to know about JavaScript step by step. We will explore not only how to code, but also why things work the way they do. Trust me, this approach will set you up to write clean, effective JavaScript code that is easy to understand and maintain. Throughout this series, we are going to build real-world projects like this, and many other mini projects. This is going to set you aside and enable you to get a job as a modern software developer. So stick with me as we go from JavaScript basics to pro level skills. Let's look at what you should expect from this series. We are going to start from JavaScript fundamentals. We look at data types and operators, control flow, functions, DOM manipulation, event and event handling, error handling, asynchronous JavaScript, advanced JavaScript concepts, ESCs, and modern JavaScript. We are going to look at object-oriented programming in details. We look at debugging and testing. Everything you need to basically work with JavaScript. By the end of this series, on your own, you will be able to pick any project from start and finish it up. Let's get started on this journey to master JavaScript the right way. What exactly is JavaScript? In a very simple form, JavaScript is what makes websites interactive and dynamic, allowing us to write everything from simple animations to complex applications. You have probably heard of HTML and CSS. Looking at this simple analogy, we relate HTML to a building. Here we see that HTML is simply the structure of our building, okay? Then CSS is what beautifies the building, and JavaScript actually add functionality when we talk about switching on the lights and anything that involves interactivity. We talk about JavaScript. So JavaScript is the magic that brings everything to life. Now that we know what JavaScript is, let's talk about where it actually lives. JavaScript primarily runs in the browser, which means whenever you are interacting with a website, whether clicking a button, filling a form, submitting a post, JavaScript is working behind the scenes to make it all happen. Each browser has its own JavaScript engine responsible for executing JavaScript code. For Google Chrome, we have the V8 engine. For Safari, we have JavaScript Core. For Firefox, we have the Spider Monkey. Do not bother yourself about this for now. We look at this in details later in the series. JavaScript isn't just limited to the browser. Thanks to tools like Node.js, JavaScript can run on servers, making it possible to use JavaScript for back-end development. JavaScript can therefore be used to build full-stack applications that can bundle everything from database to the UI. Think of JavaScript as a language that is versatile enough to run both in your browser and on the server. That's why JavaScript is so popular and such a valuable skill to learn. All right, let's jump into writing our very first JavaScript code. Since we talked about how JavaScript runs in the browser, let's take advantage of that by using the browser's built-in console. So you can open your browser, any browser of your choice. In this series, I'll be using the Google Chrome, okay? So on your browser, simply right-click and you will see this inspect. Just click on this inspect and that takes you to what we call the developer tools. Here you can click on this console, which is the browser's built-in console. Now we can execute JavaScript code. For instance, you can type alert and here you can say hello to JavaScript and now hit enter and there it is. Hello to JavaScript. Congratulations, you have written and executed your very first line of JavaScript code. So here we can also do many things. For instance, we can add two numbers together and this will give you the results 9. We can multiply two numbers together. We can also do more than just one operation. So we can say 9 minus 4, which gives us 5, plus 5, and that should give us 10. Feel free to play around. This is a great way to get a feel for JavaScript in action. For this course, we need to install two very important tools. The first one is a code editor where we simply write our code. For this course, I'll be using Visual Studio Code. You can open your browser and type Visual Studio Code. Open the first option and you will see an option to download Visual Studio Code for your machine. So either you are using Windows, Mac OS or Linux, you will see an option for that. Simply click on download and install Visual Studio Code. Next, type Node.js, open the first option, download the long-term support and install it on your machine. Now come to your desktop or anywhere you want to place your folder and create a new folder. I'm going to call this JavaScript. If you're on Windows, you can right-click on this folder and you will see an option to open with your code editor. If you're on Mac, you can simply drag and drop this folder into your code editor. Here is our project folder. Let's create a file and let's call this index.html. And on Visual Studio Code, we can simply use a shortcut to generate HTML boilerplates. For this course, I expect you already have a basic knowledge of HTML and CSS. But if you do not know HTML and CSS, feel free to check out my complete playlist on HTML and CSS. So either you are new to programming or not, you are going to understand everything we do in this series. Here in the body, let's put the header tag. Here, let's put h1 and let's simply say JavaScript. Great. For the purpose of this course, we are going to add some extensions. So click on this icon. First one is going to be what we call prettier. Click on this and here you will see install. I already have it installed. So prettier is simply a code formatter. The next one is what we call the live server. Here also you will see install. Kindly install live server. Great. We are going to add some other extensions as we progress with the series. Once you install live server, you will see an option at the bottom of your Visual Studio Code which says Go Live. Simply click on Go Live. Great. Here is our web page. So now let's open the developer tools. We right click on this and click on Inspect. Okay. We can also do the same thing by pressing Command Option J. This takes us directly to the console. Good. I'm going to shift the web browser to one side and also the code editor to one side. Now that we've seen JavaScript in action in the console, let's take it one step further and link JavaScript with an HTML file. When it comes to adding JavaScript to HTML, we have three main ways. Let's go through each one and talk about when you might use them. The first one is what we call the inline JavaScript. So for now, I'm going to close this side. Okay, you can click on this or you use Command B. Okay, Command B on Mac. I think that should be Control B on Windows. The first one is what we call the inline JavaScript. With inline JavaScript, you can add JavaScript directly inside HTML tags. Okay, these are HTML tags. These are what we call tags, HTML tags. So this one is what we call the opening tag. This is the closing tag. Why this is the content. And the complete gives us what we call the HTML elements. Okay, so we can add JavaScript to this tag, and we do that in this opening tag using JavaScript events. So we have some event attributes like onClick. So we can say onClick equals to, and here we can simply say alert hello to JavaScript. And let's save this file. Now on the browser, simply click on this JavaScript because we added this to the H1. So when you click on this H1, you see hello to JavaScript. You remember this was what we did the other time using the console. But now this is coming directly from this HTML file. Great. So this is one way we can add JavaScript to our HTML document. Okay, this approach, the inline JavaScript, is useful for simple interactions, but it's generally not recommended. Okay, so maybe in a very old code base, you could see this, a very old code base, because this is actually not recommended. The second approach is what we call the internal JavaScript. You can add JavaScript directly inside your HTML file within a script tag, typically placed either in the head or in the body. So in the body, after this header, using the script tag. Now inside this script tag, we can write any JavaScript code. Here, let's say alert hello JavaScript from the script tags, and save this file, and you see hello to JavaScript from the script tags. Perfect. So this approach is what we call the internal JavaScript, and this is ideal for small projects or quick tests where you don't want to set up multiple files. For larger projects though, it can make HTML clustered. Okay, so for larger projects also, this is not much recommended. The third approach, which is the approach we are going to use all through this series, and also because that is what you will see in real world, is what we call the external JavaScript. So let's remove this and also remove the onClick from the H1 and save our file. The external JavaScript is basically keeping our JavaScript in a separate file. So open this up. Now let's create a new file and let's call this scripts.js. Okay, you can basically call this anything, but the extension should be JS. Okay, it must be .js. And here, let's simply say alert, hello JavaScript from the script file. Good. Now let's save this. And when you save this, hey, nothing happens. Yes, that's because we are here to link this particular script.js file with the HTML file. So to link this external file to this HTML file, we need to use what we call the script tag also. Okay, so we use the script tag inside the head. Okay, you can either place this inside the head or down. Okay, just here at the body. So first we can copy this and put it here in the body. Okay, but for this to work, we need to add an attribute, which is the source attribute. And what does this do? This actually tells the location of this file. Okay, so here we can select this script.js. When you save this now, you see hello JavaScript from the script file. Great. But instead of placing it here in the body, I'm going to remove it and put it in the head. Okay, but if you put it in the head, here we need to add one more thing, which is what we call defer. Explaining why we added this defer when we place the script in the head might be a bit complex for you right now. So we are going to look at this in details very soon. Hence, we can either add this script at the final parts. Okay, it could be the last thing here inside the body, or we place it inside the head and add this defer, which basically makes it possible for the browser to access our HTML code before reading the JavaScript code. But we see this in details very soon. Let's remove these alerts and use the console.log. And whatsoever we put here, we are going to see it here in the browser console. Okay, for instance, when we put hello from the JavaScript file and save this in our console, we now see hello JavaScript from the file. Okay, great. When you look at this very well, it tells us the name of the file, which is our script.js, and also the line number. So here is line 1. Now let's do another one, console.log. Let's say 2 + 8, we see 10, our file name, and also the line number. So this is from line 2. You see how useful this console could be. Notice how we added a semicolon at the end of this statement. A statement is considered as a complete piece of code that expresses an action. Okay, so at the end of this statement, we added a semicolon. This simply tells that this is the end of this statement. In JavaScript, this is actually not compulsory. So when you remove the semicolon and save this file, everything works well. But let's start talking about best practices in coding right from the fundamentals. So in practice, as a JavaScript developer, you are expected to add this just to make your code more easy to read and clean. Okay, so we can do something like console.log 3 - 1 and end this statement and write another one, console.log, let's say I, and save this file. When you save this file, you are going to see 2 and I in your console. So this is a valid JavaScript code because this ends the statement. But when you remove this semicolon, you immediately see this red line, which tells you that no, there is an error. Okay, semicolon is expected. It is best to always add this semicolon. Remember, it is not an add rule, it is just best practice. Okay, let's look at variables in JavaScript. What is a variable? A variable is simply a container for a value. So variables are used to store data that we can use and manipulate throughout our code. Let's look at an example. In JavaScript, we declare variables with keyword. So we have the let, const, and var keyword. Let's start with the let keyword. In declaring a variable, we simply say let, for instance, we define a username. We can also say let my previous salary. This is how we declare variables in JavaScript. The next thing we want to look at is how we initialize a variable. So here we declare this variable, which is simply a container. And for now, this is going to be an empty container. Let's see that in action. When you do console.log, let's say username, and you save this file, here you see undefined. It is undefined because here we only declared the variable. The next thing we want to look at is how we actually initialize a variable. So by the time you take the username and assign a value to this username, let's say J-GraceCoder. Now let's do console.log username again. Now we should see J-GraceCoder. Okay, so let's look at this variable. In line 11, which is this, in line 11, we have undefined. Why? Because we declared the variable without initialization. So in line 12, we initialized the variable. And in line 13, we now have the value for the variable. Okay, we can also declare and initialize a variable at the same time. So we can say let age be equal to 27. And now let's do console.log age and save this file. Now we have 27. Okay, so here we have 27. Notice how we put this inside the quotes and this number is not inside a quote. So here, this is what we call a string. We are going to look at this variable, and this is what we call number. So think of a variable like a labeled box where we can store a value. This value can be anything, okay? The value can be anything. It can be string, it can be number. So let's say let is logged in be equal to false. Okay, and when you do console.log is logged in, you now see false. Okay, so this is how we declare a variable and initialize a variable. And we also see that we can also declare and initialize a variable at the same time. Now let's look at the const keyword. We can say const birth year is equal to 1997, and console.log birth year and save this file. This gives us 1997. Great. Before we look at the last and the oldest keyword, which is the var, let's look at the difference between the let and the const keyword. Just as this sounds, this is a constant, okay? So we use the const keyword to declare variables that we know they are not going to change all through our program. Okay, so that is the main difference between the let and the const. Another very important thing to know is that you cannot declare a variable using const without initialization. Okay, remember here we did let username, let my previous salary. Now here, let's try const my current salary, mine, not mu. And here immediately you see the red line. This is an error. So if you try doing console.log my current salary, okay, and you save this, you see this syntax error, missing initializer in const declaration. You even see the line, okay, so at 22. So at line 22, we tried declaring this variable without initialization. Okay, so you see that that is a syntax error. This is not possible. you have to initialize a variable declared with const. It has to be declared and initialized at the same time. So here, let's simply say 80,000. Now, let's save this file. Now you see 80,000 from line 23, which is this, okay? Line 23, you now see this 80,000. So those are the two major things I want you to put in mind. The next keyword we are going to look at is what we call the var keyword. And this is the oldest keyword used in declaring variables. When JavaScript was first created, this was actually the only way to declare a variable. So we can say var first name is equal to Grace. Also, we can console.log first name, and that should give us Grace. In practice, we no longer use this var keyword. And this is because the design of this var is confusing and error prone. Let's look at one of the reasons why this is no longer being used. Now, let's look at something. Let's say last name is equal to, let's say Augustine, okay? And we save this file. Now, let's console.log last name. Let's now say var last name. When you save this file, you see that there is no error. And here you see what is happening. Here we initialized this variable called last name. Then we now declared it. So we are initializing a variable before declaration, declaring a variable after initialization. This is actually confusing because we should actually declare a variable before initializing the variable. Okay, but when you try this with let's change this with let and save our file. Here we get a reference error. Okay, so using var here, save the file, no error. This is actually confusing. Now let's look at another thing. We can actually say var secret code is equal to 333, and we can also say var secret code is equal to 555. Save the file. Now let's console.log secret code. Now we have 555. Now you see this is strange. With var, you can declare the same variable as many times as you like. And this is very confusing. If you try this with let, it will actually throw an error. Okay? You see? If you do this with let, you get an error, syntax error. Identifier secret code has already been declared. Okay, so you see that let is actually saver. You see why var is no longer being used. So we see a lot of strange behaviors using this var. We will see another very important thing with this var when we get to scoping in JavaScript. For now, we don't have to bother about this. But the take home is do not use var, okay? We need to know this because in some old code base, you could see this keyword var in declaring variables. So you have to know this. But in general, in modern web development, we no longer use var. Instead, we use let or const. So let's take this away. Now, before we leave this session, let's answer a common question, which is, which one should I use, let or const? The answer is use const whenever possible. Okay, in general, for everything I'm going to be doing, you will see me use const. So I'm going to use const whenever possible. It helps make your code more predictable. So you use const almost for everything. Then you use let only when you are sure that a particular variable is going to change within your program. Okay, and remember, in general, we avoid var in modern JavaScript. Next, let's look at naming variables. How do we name our variables? Now let's look at what we've been doing in modern JavaScript. In general, we use the camel case. Okay, so camel case means you start with small letter and the subsequent words are going to start with capital letter. For instance, is logged in. Is starts with small letter, then logged capital letter, and the next word in starts with capital letter. So this is what we call the camel case, okay? And every JavaScript variable must start with either a letter, a $sign, or underscore. So we can say const place of work is equal to Microsoft, okay? And now we do console.log place of work. And here you see Microsoft without any error. Okay, so a variable name can also start with a $sign, and we can say number of experience is equal to 8. And now you can do console.log number of experience, and you see 8 without any error. Now let's try doing const. Now let's start with a number and say name, and immediately you see this error. When you hover on this, you see an identifier or keyword cannot immediately follow a numeric literal. Okay, so you see this is not possible. In general, we name a variable. In general, the name of a variable must either start with a word, okay, underscore, or $sign. Also, JavaScript keyword cannot be used. So we cannot say const function, okay, is equal to 8. No, this is a keyword. Function is a keyword in JavaScript. We cannot use it. Okay, we cannot also use var, since var is also a keyword. We can't use class, since class is a keyword. Okay, so these are keywords in JavaScript. We can't use them while naming variables. In practice, as a modern JavaScript developer, we often face with the problem of naming variable. Okay, sometimes, you start thinking, oh, what should I call this? What should I call this? Naming variable is very important because variable is a building block in JavaScript. So naming variable properly is very important. The name you give your variable might either make your code so bad, okay, so your code could be so bad that no one can understand your code. For instance, I can say const salary 1 is equal to 40,000 is equal to 60,000. Salary 3 is equal to 70,000. Now, how do I know which is your current salary? How do I know which is your previous salary? So instead of using salary 1, salary 2, salary 3, it is better to use my previous salary, just as we did here. Okay, so here you see we said my previous salary, and next we use my current salary. And you can also do something like my next salary. It should be explanatory. Okay, hence variable names should be descriptive and follow camel case. This is very important. Understanding how to use variables effectively will help you write better code and keep your data organized. Now, let's look at comments in JavaScript. In JavaScript, we use comments to add explanations to our code or disable code without deleting it. JavaScript has two types of comments. We have what we call the single line comment. And single line comments are created using 2/. Okay, so at the beginning of the course, you saw me do this. This is what we call comments actually. So this is an example of a single line comment. So to add a single line comment, 2/. So whatsoever we put here is going to be ignored by the browser. For instance, if you put console.log and save this file, you see 5 is not shown here. But if you remove this, okay, and put it here and save it, you simply see 5. So anything you put at the back of this comment is going to be ignored. Now, let's use this and add some comments here. So let's say here, examples on let's keyword, okay? So you can also do the same here. Examples on const. Okay, we also have what we call multi-line comments. And multi-line comments can span multiple lines. Create a multi-line comment. We use the /, we put star, and here we can write anything. So let's say this is a multi-line comment. It is very helpful. It's a good way of documenting our code. Okay, and we can end it here using star and /. So this is an example of multi-line comment. And this multi-line comment is very useful. For instance, when describing what a block of code does. So for example, here we can have a function. Now we don't know what a function is, but we are going to get to this in this series. So we can use multi-line to describe what a particular block of code does. Let's say you built an application and after 6 months, you could pick up the code and you might actually forget some things. The comments you added will actually help you pick up any part of your code very fast. Also, in real world, we work with many developers. Okay, so we have a very large code base and we are going to be working with other developers. So any other person or your teammates that picks the code will be able to understand what you've implemented. Okay, therefore, comments are important to explain complex logic, to document our functions, to write to do. For instance, if there is a part of your task that you are yet to complete, you can actually use comments to say, okay, to do, okay, that you are going to do this later. We can also use comments to disable code. For instance, I want this to be disabled, okay? So I can use comments. Instead of removing this code, I will use comments to disable it. Perfect. So these are comments in JavaScript. In summary, we've seen JavaScript as what makes our website interactive. Okay, remember this is a basic definition. We are going to see more about JavaScript in details later in the series. We also looked at JavaScript engines. We said on Google Chrome, we have the V8 engine. On Mozilla, we have the Spider Monkey. On Safari, we have the JavaScript core. We are going to understand the usefulness of these engines and what we as a developer should know about JavaScript engines. We looked at how we can add JavaScript to HTML5. So we saw the inline JavaScript, the internal and the external JavaScript. We looked at variables and we said that variables are simply a container for a value, and that the value could be anything. It could be string, it could be number, it could be Boolean, anything. Finally, we looked at comments. Comments help explain our code, making it easier to read and understand. Thank you for being part of this video. Do not forget to like, drop a comment, and subscribe to this channel. It takes you nothing.